My name is David Harvey. I direct the Center for Place, Culture and Politics here at the CUNY Graduate Center. On behalf of the CUNY Graduate Center, I want to welcome everybody to this great event. The Center's given over to the study of radical issues and politics. The theme of our seminar this year is Uprisings, and this panel fits extremely well with what our work is about. This is a moment where obviously things are not at all well in the global economy, where many people are suffering, where I think we have to move from a situation of a thinking about another world is possible to thinking another world must be made. And I think at this particular moment it's therefore very apt that two of the most active student movements in the Americas, but that in Montreal, Quebec, and that in Chile are brought together with the student activists here in New York City. And as I say, this is for me a great pleasure and a privilege to be able to participate in this event.
When we looked at the history of CUNY, we saw that there was resistance, that there always has been resistance, but that resistance must also be developed and built in such a way that there really is a student movement that is constantly not only fighting to be able to win over open admissions again for everyone, or decrease tuition, eventually abolish the Board of Trustees, but it's important that the movement is sustainable so that when we do win those fights, we can have those victories be more permanent.
We are definitely up against a very serious situation. Education is in a profound crisis in New York City and in the United States altogether. It's basically the last major social sphere that's being privatized that's in our generation right now. There's a really excellent article that had come out called How the American University Was Killed in 5 Easy Steps. Had anyone read that? So what it basically did was it laid out what things have been looking like over the last 30 years, how the American university was killed. Step 1, defund public higher education. Step 2, deprofessionalize and impoverish the professors. Step 3, move in a managerial and administrative class who take over governance of the university. Tell me if any of this sounds familiar. Step 4, move in corporate culture and corporate money into public university systems. And step 5, destroy student movements. So in sum, we have over the last 30 years, and much more intensely concentrated over really the last decade, the last several years, we now see that adjuncts are currently 75% of all professors who teach in the United States. We see that administrators outnumber faculty on every campus across the country. Our school spaces, like the Graduate Center itself, they're rented out to the highest bidder, people who are connected to corporate money, connected to banks, connected to all of these different ridiculous ways that people are actively privatizing the globe. Students are forced to shackle ourselves with costly education, ongoing debt, and vulnerable work if we can get it. And if we try to resist, then we get arrested, we get pepper sprayed, we get intimidated, we get searched, we get followed around. So this is the situation that we're up against.
And the basic idea is that students are intellectual workers. And it's to see students as a group as having this particular relationship to capital, to the means of production, to sort of social reproduction as a whole. And aside from having this idea, that has specific consequences. And I think one of the most important consequences is if you don't just see students as sort of a social strata that just kind of exists and they have these characteristics and these kind of demographic characteristics, but you actually look at students as a group and say, well, students are in universities. And universities aren't kind of an incidental cultural activity. Universities fulfill major social functions. They fulfill this kind of function of reproducing leaders and business people and politicians and lawyers, but they also kind of, increasingly, of course, in the last few decades since the Second World War, they reproduce workers. And those are people who do important things for capital. And the idea is, since we're actually workers, since we actually provide a service to capitalism, since they actually need us to do the things that we do as students, the state will not be okay, business will not be okay if we just shut down the universities, if we just shut down the colleges. And they've been right over and over again. I think Ermac mentioned, there have been now, this is the 8th general strike in Quebec, all of which have won basically their main demands. And it's a big deal in a movement that to win all of your demands every time.
I think one of the interesting things that happened last year is that the government, whenever it felt that the movement was becoming too large, perhaps too dangerous, the way it attacked the movement, it said this movement is becoming too political. As if something political is something bad, obviously. And I think that what was different in this movement is that instead of saying, no, this is not a political movement, I don't know, this is a movement of everyone. Yes, this is a large movement. This is a movement of a large majority of our country. According to surveys, it represented almost 90% of the country. But exactly because of that, it was a deeply political movement, because to be political is to go beyond the small struggles, the sectorial struggles, and start addressing the structural issues. I believe that there are some things that unite all struggles around the world for a more just and more equal society. But I also believe that it is important that when we discuss these issues, that we recognize the differences between each reality. I do not believe that there is the same reality in Chile, in Colombia, in Canada, in the States, in Europe, in the Middle East. I think there are different realities that may have some common ground, but we should always remember that our history defines the moment that we are living right now, and we may help each other through companionship, through telling our stories, this long story that is told in a short way. And as long as we recognize each other's struggle as an equally important but different struggle, I believe that there is much to learn in spaces such as this. Thank you.
Para nosotros la recuperación de la educación pública no tiene que ver simplemente con que la educación estatal, de propiedad estatal, empiece a recibir más recursos del Estado, porque hoy día casi no recibe recursos directos del Estado, sino que también tiene que ver con el sentido que tiene que tener las instituciones que son públicas, es decir, como espacios públicos. Y para eso nosotros vemos al menos 3 elementos fundamentales. Las instituciones públicas tienen que ser abiertas a la sociedad, es decir, que sean democráticas en el acceso. Una institución que se dice pública tiene que representar la diversidad socioeconómica, sociocultural, étnica, religiosa del país. No puede educar a un segmento simplemente. Pero también un segundo elemento tiene que ver con la democracia interna. Nosotros creemos que la concepción del gobierno corporativo, que es como esto que se quiere introducir desde la visión de la universidad empresa, es totalmente contradictoria con la concepción de universidad pública, que tiene que garantizar espacios democráticos de participación de las comunidades, ¿ya? Es decir, estudiantes, profesores, trabajadores. De hecho, consideramos que esa forma de participación no solamente permite fiscalizar mejor cómo se destinan los recursos de la institución, sino que incluso permite hacer más eficiente el desarrollo de la institución, ¿ya? Porque permite no solamente educar en términos cívicos, sino que también que las comunidades se hagan cargo de la toma de decisiones, se hagan responsables del proceso de toma de decisiones. Y un tercer elemento tiene que ver con la democratización del conocimiento, es decir, que el conocimiento que producen las instituciones públicas, sobre todo digo la educación superior, que sean de acceso público, que no sean propiedad exclusiva de una corporación, de una empresa privada, y eso también tiene que ver con la autonomía o el cierto grado de autonomía que tiene que tener una institución pública respecto a los intereses económicos de cierto grupo empresarial, a los intereses religiosos de determinada religión, valga la redundancia, o intereses de los gobiernos de turno, ¿cierto? los intereses que tiene que perseguir una institución pública tienen que ser los intereses de la gran mayoría. Por lo tanto, el conocimiento que se genere dentro de esos establecimientos tiene que responder a esos intereses mayoritarios. Pero lo que voy es que hoy día creo yo que ese discurso hegemónico del fin de la historia puede empezar a derrumbarse de a poco, y creo que tenemos que nosotros ampliar la fisura que hoy día tiene. Ese cuestionamiento que tiene ese discurso hay que ampliarlo no solamente a otros sectores de nuestra población, sino que a nivel mundial. Y abrirnos la posibilidad de construir una alternativa, de construir un mundo distinto, que nosotros creemos que es absolutamente posible, pero no solamente posible, sino que es necesario y es urgente hacerlo. Muchas gracias.